Thank you, Melissa. Hey, everybody, so I guess kind of more of a broad-based presentation, DeFi, gaming, ZK. I mean, literally anything crypto, this is going to apply. So I'm Dave Rodman, managing partner of the Rodman Law Group. We focus on digital assets in Web3, cannabis, and psychedelics. We're located here in Denver. I chair the digital assets and Web3 venture capital practice. I've been practicing in Web3 since 2016, so it's a huge part of my life professionally and personally. And as you've probably heard people say in the past, while I am a lawyer, unless you are currently a client of mine, which I don't see in the audience, I am not your lawyer. So this is educational in nature. So if you were reading the syllabus, the original talk was titled, "You Are Probably Breaking the Law." And if you saw what was just up, it's not that. The reason for that is that when I created this presentation, a law had gone into effect that few people other than lawyers and CPAs in the space were really aware of, and there was no way to comply with it. And I'll talk about that in a second. But luckily for the industry, unluckily for my talk, that law was put on hold temporarily about a day after it was about to fuck some people over. So this is the actual title. It's just legal considerations for Web3 founders. So we're going to cover the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That's the Corporate Transparency Act. We're going to touch on dealing with tokens, which is important to everyone in here. And at the end, we're going to discuss legal costs, because we have seen a lot of clients come to our firm, shared quotes from very well-known law firms, and blew my mind at what people thought was normal to accept for legal fees. So to kick off, despite looking down the barrel of a new bull market and getting very close to all-time highs, 2024 isn't exactly looking great for crypto projects. So the law I mentioned earlier, which is I'm going to refer to as the IIJA for ease, was passed in 2021, but it only went into effect this year. It had two major effects for people in the crypto industry. It required that all brokers or any person responsible for regularly providing any service effectuating transfers of digital assets on behalf of another person file Form 1099-B to report such transactions. This set off a firestorm in the industry as it wildly increased the scope of the word broker. And its wording cast a huge net that could, in theory, require everything from exchanges, both centralized and decentralized, sequencers, miners, validators, and many others to report transactions to the IRS. This puts certain projects in the impossible situation of having to report on things that cannot be reported on. Thankfully, there was pushback from the industry, and that has not gone into effect. But I suggest that everyone who's in crypto pay attention to that and keep it in mind, because it's going to get implemented soon. But we're not going to spend a whole lot. We're not going to spend any more time talking about that part, because we could talk about that for 3 or 4 hours. But the second thing that the IIJA did was that it required companies to treat crypto payments as though they were cash. This is a mind-blowing requirement for anybody who understands how crypto works, and it's the actual law that influenced the original title of this presentation. The other 2024 goodie that went into effect is called the Corporate Transparency Act, and it significantly increases the disclosure and compliance burden for nearly all small businesses in this country. So let's touch on the IIJA. Basically, businesses that receive more than $10,000 in crypto, worth of crypto, in one transaction or in 2 and more related transactions must file Form 8300 within 15 days. This is exactly how the IRS and FinCEN treat cash payments. So what is one transaction? It's all transactions between two parties that occur within a 24-hour period, and it's all related transactions between parties that occur within a 12-month period. So what are the penalties for failing to report within 15 days? The negligent failure to report is $280 per occurrence. Don't worry, not to exceed about $3 million per year. Now that's just negligence. Intentional or willful failure to report, the civil penalties are the cash value of the transaction. The criminal penalties are up to 5 years in prison, $25,000 in penalties for an individual, and $100,000 in penalties for a corporation. If you intentionally file one of these reports incorrectly, then the criminal penalty is 5 years in prison, and then civil, again, breaks between individuals and corporations, but it's $100,000 and $500,000. So this is infuriating for a few reasons. It illustrates the clear misunderstanding of how crypto works and the perception amongst our elected officials that crypto is still only used for illegal activity. It also further highlights that the single best way to launder money is still through the good old US dollar. But the most immediate cause for concern is that this law went into effect on January 1st of this year, and it seems like it was designed to trip up crypto companies intentionally. The form that you would use to file this sort of thing is called a Form 8300, and it's put out by the IRS, and FinCEN uses it. And you have to sit back and think for a second, because the IIJA was passed in November of 2021. The most recent form update to Form 8300 was published in December of 2023. This is the section of that form that you would have to use to be in compliance with this law. Take a look at it and see if you can spot the problem. There is not a category for cryptocurrency. So in essence, you have despite having 2 years to prepare for this, the government put something that went into effect on January 1st, and the thing that you would use to report it literally couldn't be used to report it. So this hits home personally for me and my firm. We accepted a retainer payment on the 2nd of January. I looked into reporting it and found that I couldn't, because it would have been due for me on the 16th of January. So we just kind of resigned ourselves to the fact that we weren't going to be able to report. Luckily, the enforcement was delayed on the 16th, the day that we would have been in violation personally. But it's unclear when it's going to go live. It could go live any day now. And it would affect basically everyone in this room. There's very few exceptions to it. So this is one of those things where all that we can really do is talk to our elected officials and try to get them to undo this law, because it is an unnecessary burden on crypto companies. The second treat from 2024 is the Corporate Transparency Act. Now this affects all small businesses, or almost all businesses in this country. Almost all large businesses are exempt from this. It's billed as everything that seems to target our industry as a way to combat money laundering. But really all it does is increases the compliance costs and reporting costs for small businesses and startups. It also requires that founders and service providers like myself, who help founders form entities, file a lot of personally identifiable information with FinCEN, which is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, proactively. Now, I've done this kind of as a test, It is not the hardest thing in the world, but I had to give all my personal details to the government in one nice little database that seems like it would be an optimal honey trap for any bad actor. But who is covered by this? Owners of a company with at least 25% equity ownership, individuals like me who help form companies, but also the founder who directs me to form a company, CPAs, paralegals, other providers like that. Beneficial owners. So 25% ownership, that makes sense. You're a beneficial owner. But let's say you're a director that has no equity, or you're an officer that has no equity. You are also a beneficial owner, and you also need to comply. What do you need to give to the government? Your full legal name, your date of birth, your complete current address, and a valid government ID. If your government ID expires, like mine just did, it is my duty to go and fill out a new FinCEN form and upload my new driver's license. And if I don't, my law firm, and then by extension me, can get in trouble for not staying in compliance. When is this supposed to happen? For any entity, anybody in here with a company that was formed prior to the 1st of this year, you have until the end of this year to make this filing. If you form an entity in this year, you have 90 days from the date of formation. So form it today, 90 days. If you don't do it, you're in violation. Starting on January 1st, 2025, you will have 30 days. What are the penalties? Failure to report accurate beneficial ownership information, fines of up to $10,000, and imprisonment of up to 2 years. People talk about this part all the time. They don't seem to talk about the potential corollary to this, which is that the CTA requires the company and the people working for the company to handle personally identifiable information, and there's a lot of just general civil risk around that. But in addition to that, the CTA also says that if you misuse this information, which they haven't really defined what misuse means, fines of up to $250,000 and imprisonment for 5 years. So these are the gems that we were given this year, and I can guarantee you that crypto companies are going to be the ones that see this kind of scrutiny before any other companies, because it gives the government another sort of wedge with which to mess with our industry. So basically, you need to take the CTA seriously, is what I'm saying. Talk to your lawyers, talk to your CPAs, make sure that you are filing what you need to file in a timely manner. I'm going to switch gears now. I didn't realize I had this short amount of time, but I'm going to switch gears and talk about some of the other things that are very important to founders in this space, and that is capital considerations. So the de facto industry standard that has kind of become prevalent, which drives a lot of lawyers bonkers, is this safe and token warrant combination. When you think about it, what this effectively does, because we all know that the tokens are going to be created offshore, this requires a US company to sell the securities of another entity. We all would argue that tokens are not securities, but a token warrant is without a doubt a security. This brings broker-dealer rules into play and makes the whole process of raising capital much, much more risky. So instruments that pertain to both tokens and equity sold by a US company are not the way you want to do this. And we have case law on this. The Telegram case clearly lays this out. So do not do a safe and a token warrant. I tell this to all of my founders, and they will say to me constantly, well, that's what Acrylic wants me to do. That's what Dragonfly wants me to do. That's what Polychain wants me to do. They're not your lawyers. They don't care about you. They don't care if you go to jail. They don't care if you have fines. They just want their returns. They are not your friends. Your lawyer has an ethical duty to make sure you do things correctly. So what do? You have if you're going to issue a non-priced round, you use a safe out of your US co, and you do a SAFT out of an offshore entity. This is by and away the easiest and safest way to form, to raise money with tokens and with equity. Also, before you start any of this, you need to decide whether value accrues to the token or to the equity or to both. It might change the analysis slightly, but if you're going to talk about both, you need to split those instruments up. So the offshore entities are expensive, and I recognize that. So a lot of clients are forced to do at least a little bit of raising with a dual instrument. So rather than a safe and a token warrant, again, a warrant is a security. I can't emphasize that enough. A safe with a vague side letter that mentions tokens in a sort of abstract manner is far safer. So this is the structure. This is how you do it. Use a company in Wyoming. Wyoming is the safest place in America to issue, to have any kind of token project. From there, you create a token issuance structure. Foundation company in the Cayman Islands. It has no owners, and that is the intention of the structure. It owns a company in the Caymans that's the equivalent of a C Corp in America. And then that owns a token issuance entity in the BVI. The BVI is the only place in the world that it makes sense to issue tokens from at this point. Hands down, no exceptions. That's where you fucking do it. Now, we used to also throw the OPCO in the BVI. But about 2 years ago, they changed the way, they changed the laws, and they made it difficult for OPCOs to function under the law there. So we've added to our structure. Panama is where you put your OPCO. Panama does not regulate crypto, and at least what you're doing there is not illegal in that country, and that's about as good as you can get. You'll notice that there's a thing called a secretary and a supervisor. Those are third parties that you pay for them. And you can also pay for a professional director. The secretary is mandatory and it's usually included in the formation fee. The supervisor and the director, I have some clients that just are the supervisor and the director of their own project. Otherwise, you hire somebody. Honestly, hiring somebody is the better way to go. So, token issuer, it sells SAFs, it does IDOs, it does IEOs. DevCo, Project Co, Business Co, whatever you want to call it in the US, sells safes, issues equities in a priced round. Whether or not you do both, once you get past the bare minimum to like move stuff offshore, if it entirely depends on your project. But if you're going to have value accrue to both places, that's how you do it. On top of that, you need to do all of your equity sales under Reg D, which is an exemption to the U.S. securities laws. 506C in particular, and I know I'm saying a lot of jargon that you might not know. Either come up and talk to me afterwards or talk to your lawyer. They'll know what I'm talking about. But that's how you handle equity in America. For your sales of tokens or your sales of SAFs, token purchase agreements, SAFs, token warrants, whatever, you want to be able to rely under Reg S. Regulation S was designed to allow me, an American, to go to France or Canada, Germany, buy equity in a French-German Canadian company and not be regulated by the US. It was not designed for the Zoom age. So to make this work, all of your purchasers should be offshore because you're probably sitting at your home in America or talking to a fund that is domiciled in America. So you want to be able to say that the solicitation didn't happen in America. There's no real case law on that yet. So what you need to do is make sure that the buyer and the seller, so the seller in that case is BVI, the buyer needs to be non-American as well. This is the most defensible way to sell tokens by far. Quick note on SAFE, and I only have a minute left. Post-money SAFE, investor-friendly. Pre-money SAFE, founder-friendly. Investors will try and push you to sign post-money SAFEs. They will make it what sounds like compelling arguments for you to do this, especially first-time founders. Do not believe their lies. Post-money safes give investors full ratchet anti-dilution protection at the expense of founders and their employees. You'll have to fight, you'll have to stand your ground, but ultimately, that couple of percentage points that you save, you and your team, can be life-changing. Some fund, some angel investor making $100,000 checks, those percentages aren't life-changing, but they still want them. So advocate for yourself, have a spine, and stand up for your equity. Don't let them bully you. Trust me, I've seen it done, and I've seen the founders who do stand up for themselves. Eventually, they have better relationships with their investors because they know that they can't be pushed around. Always push for pre-money safes. And finally, all right, I didn't get to talk about the legal costs, but do not spend $300,000 on your lawyer. Do not spend $500,000 on your lawyer. These are all quotes that we've gotten this year. They are insane. It's malpractice. You should spend no more than 50 grand, and likely about 30. So if you're getting quotes like that, you're being taken advantage of. That's it. Thanks, guys.